Hi, everyone. Welcome to your Money Map, sponsored by the Alliance for a Lifetime Income. I'm your host, Jean Chatsky. Very glad to have you along with us today. We are diving into a topic that no one really wants to think about. That's being forced to retire before you're ready. Forced early retirement can come as a shock, disrupting not only your sense of identity, but also throwing off course your long-term retirement savings and other financial plans. According to a new survey, the fear of unemployment has now reached its highest level since the pandemic. The thought of losing a job, it can be nerve wracking for anyone, honestly. But for those closest to retirement, it is especially strong. If you're approaching retirement yourself and you're concerned about being laid off, or if you've already faced a forced early retirement, it can be stressful to say the least. The good news is that there are some things you can do to bounce back financially, mentally, and emotionally. My guest today is an authority in teaching people how to do just that. Kerry Hannon is a leading expert workplace futurist and strategist on careers, jobs, entrepreneurship, personal finance, and retirement. She is the author of more than a dozen books, wow, including her latest, In Control at 50 Plus, How to Succeed in the New World of Work. Today, she is a senior columnist for Yahoo Finance. That's where we catch her on the regular, but she's here with us today. Kerry, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us once again on this show.
Oh, thank you, Jean. I love being on your show, and this topic couldn't be more important today.
I think it couldn't be more important. It couldn't be more relevant with all of the Doge driven cuts at the federal level. This issue of forced early retirement has made a lot of headlines recently. The prospect of losing a job is nerve wracking. How do you suggest, or how are you suggesting that people approach the possibility of forced early retirement, both mentally and financially?
Yeah, Jean. I mean, there's a lot of good bits here, and I tend to take a positive approach on things. So uh, I think that also, in addition to the federal layoffs, we see corporations across the country have also been trimming their workforces pretty dramatically in some cases. So everyone is on pins and needles if they're facing this kind of potential downsizing. And as you mentioned, if you are at older ages, if you're in your 50s to 60s, and this is happening, it's pretty rattling.
Yeah.
The first thing I try to tell people to do, if you still got your job, make sure, and this sounds like a very basic personal finance thing that you talk about quite a bit yourself, is make sure that you have an emergency savings fund. Make sure that you have funds set aside for your cost of living that can take you maybe up to a year. I like to say a year. Some people say less, but if you have a layoff or you lose your job, the older you are, truthfully, the harder it is to get back in. So it's important to have that cushion. And if you don't have that, and in order to do that, this involves doing something most of us roll our eyes at, but please do that budget. Find out where you can get lean and mean. What are some of the things while you're not panicked before it's too late to get to that situation? So I would say that is your number one thing, and have that in a high yield savings account. And that will, even if you're still trudging along at your job and things are okay, there's something about that sense of security that you have cash reserves.
Can we talk about the amount for a second? When you said a year, that is more than many people recommend. A lot of people say 3 to 6 months. There's been research that 6 weeks is sometimes enough to get people through. Why is having more particularly important as you get closer to retirement age, or what we typically think of as retirement age?
Yeah, Jean, the point is you don't want to have to be tapping into your retirement savings if you don't have to cover living expenses, because especially even today, we see the markets going rock and rolling practically on a daily basis. So there is this sort of discomfort, and it's unnerving. And so you don't want to be taking money from your retirement accounts when the market's down, and that kind of thing. So I think the most important thing is, if you, I mean, a year is a huge amount of money, but if you can start automating this process, making an automatic, deduction from your paycheck straight to a high yield savings account, you'll be out of sight before you know it, and let it continue to build as you go. So I'm not telling people try to amass that amount immediately, but it truly is something worth considering to give you that protection, because it may take you quite a bit longer to get back into the job market in the way you want to be if you were to lose your position. Now, you may very well get a package that'll carry you over for a few of those months as well. But I always like to err on the side of being conservative when you think of these things.
Is that what we're starting to see? Are we starting to see the length of of people in the job market, the length of people looking for that next job taking a longer period of time?
I'm not so sure it's across all age groups that it's taking longer. It's always taken people 55 and older a longer time to find the right fit for themselves. And Jean, ageism is alive and well in the workplace. There have been some inroads, but it's really quite difficult when age kind of jumps up at you. A lot of hiring managers are in their 40s, and people like to hire people who are about their age or maybe younger. So you have to really, it comes down to that old job search trick, is who do you know? It's all about your network. And, I always say networking is, one letter away from not working, because you absolutely need to reach out to everyone you know. So even if you're happily going along in your job right now, this is a great time to make sure your network is strong and you know people in different places, and snoop around a little bit. What kinds of things might be possible for you if this were to happen? There's nothing wrong with being too prepared.
What other things can people do to make themselves more marketable for that next position while they've already got a job?
Yeah, you can't stand still. I mean, in today's world, even when you're in the job, your things are changing so quickly that we're always adding new skills. We're learning new things all the time. So if you anticipate that you may need to make a shift somehow, this is the time to make sure that your skills are really up to par, that they are relevant for the kind of work you might be looking for. And this involves kind of looking around, or what are some people doing the kind of work you do now or you want to continue doing in the future? What kind of certifications do they have? What sort of skills are they highlighting on their LinkedIn profile? So I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. It's a great place to do research about the kinds of positions out there, what skills are in demand, and that sort of thing. But I do think that's a super important thing, to really do that soul searching about what are your skills truly, what are you good at, what is it that you want to do right now. This is your time. If you are to lose a job, take control. You need to be a little proactive about who you want to be and what you want to do at this stage in your life. You have a lot to offer, but you may need to redeploy those skills into a new industry or a new direction. You may have to do flexible work for a while and then shift into, maybe that'll move up to more full-time, but you have to broaden your mindset.
A lot of people worry in this stage of life about ageism. And in your book, you cite a study that shows that hiring managers across the globe worry about the capabilities of people who are 45 and older, and in particular, their ability to absorb new technological skills, and you also point this out, that even though 85% of older employees perform as well or better than coworkers who are a decade younger. So in the field of technology and outside of the field of technology, how do we push back on these perceptions that we're too old?
I love you said the word perceptions, because that's what it is. I mean, this is a myth. I mean, if you think about it, all of us have made this adjustment from going from, to the phones we use, the computers we use, everything along the way throughout our career. The things have been changing. We've been adapting and adapting and adapting. That's what we do as human beings. It is just, crazy to think that someone who is 50 can't be picking up skills as quickly as someone who is 30. So I think that I do agree that almost anything, I think for most of us, no matter your age, repetition is what helps. I mean, sometimes you need to do something over and over again, but I mean, I got to say, when I took the position, I always tell everyone, an older worker, make sure you're up to speed with technology and so forth. And when I took the job over at Yahoo Finance, Gene, they told me, you know what, we only write in Google Docs. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I do Word. And I'd never done Google Docs before. It sounds silly, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's my entire job is writing and practically. So I was a little bit like, okay. So I quickly found a friend of mine who loves Google Docs. And I said, listen, I need some help. And he said, okay, quick, screen share. He gave me a tutorial. He said, you know what, Kerry, if you have trouble picking this up, you can always Google it. And then he said, and so I never said a word. I just started using it. And yeah, it took me a little bit. It was a little clunkier than I thought Word was, but I never complained. And now it's like a second nature, no big deal. But it did involve a pretty hard shift on my part. And I thought, holy moly, I've been talking about this. Why didn't I, I just had no idea that would change a basic tool of how I do my job.
The world is changing so quickly that some of us will need more than new skills. We actually might need a new career field where we can potentially apply some of the skills that we bring with us from prior positions. Where are the opportunities right now?
Yeah. And again, I love calling that just redeploying your skills. Don't get all freaked out that you're like making this. Yeah, you are proud. You may very well shift to a new area, but Gene, the big areas are ones that sort of are fairly obvious. I mean, healthcare, that whole, there's so many ways to slice and dice that, but healthcare, education are two areas that there is growth in, that there are job opportunities, all kinds of different work arrangements. I also see opportunities in small businesses, startups, small associations. These are types of organizations that say, hey, you know what? I value experience. I want somebody who can step into this job and do it today, do it right now. And I don't have to ramp them up, onboard them, teach them new things. They're ready to roll. So that's a key to being able to shift whatever the industry is, owning your experience, owning your ability to lead, to communicate, to manage, whatever it is that job is going to require. You more than likely have that in your toolkit. You just need to find a way to highlight it. But I think it's a matter of having some moxie and some confidence. And sometimes you might need a career coach or someone to look at you from up on a balcony and remind you of some of these things you take for granted.
Sometimes I think finding somebody who's outside of ourselves is such a good way to get a better perception of who we are, right? We don't necessarily see ourselves all that clearly, and neither, by the way, do our spouses or our best friends. Sometimes we need somebody who's just a stone's throw away. We're starting, Kerry, to get some comments in the chat, which is always great. If you've got a question for Kerry about finding your way in this next stage of your career, feel free to post it. We'll weave it into the conversation. We welcome all of them. So one of the things that we learned from a piece of research done by the Alliance for Lifetime Income is that almost half of peak 65 consumers. And just a reminder, we are right in the midst of the peak 65 zone, that period in time where more of the baby boomers turn 65 on a daily basis than at any point in history. We're looking at between 11 and 12,000 people turning 65 every single day. Well, nearly half of those folks do not believe that their retirement savings and sources of income will last their lifetime. About a third of them worry that they won't be able to cover their essential monthly expenses. If you're hit with early retirement, it can heighten those fears. So, what strategies can people undertake to get them through that burst of fear?
Yeah, Gene, that is so true, especially with longevity. It's not everyone's going to live these longer bonus years, but in fact, many people, especially knowledge workers, white collar workers, have this opportunity. And if you're going to have 3 decades, if you were to step out of the workplace, that's a lot of time to finance from your savings. And many people truly are woefully unprepared in terms of their how much they've set aside. But this is what you just mentioned is becoming increasingly a topic that people are talking to their financial advisors about. They have this gnawing fear that, they're going to make the wrong investment decisions, that the markets are going to go swingy, and they're not. They want to have some sense of comfort. So the people I am meeting with and talking with, I see a lot of people starting to carve out a piece of their retirement savings to put into these kind of lifetime income products. They're changing all the time. You know much more about them than I do, of course, but I think this is an area that guaranteed having some kind of investment vehicle that kind of gives you that peace of mind that yes, you are going to have a steady source of income throughout these next couple of decades.
Uh, Another thing that we see people doing is going back to work, not necessarily full time, but part time. What's the benefit of keeping some additional income rolling in through that period where you are transitioning into retirement?
I think it's the greatest thing. I mean, I think work is not a 4-letter word for anybody. I mean, financially, being able to continue to work in some fashion can be a safety net, even if you've saved appropriately for retirement, because you don't have to dip into those retirement accounts. Maybe you can keep adding to them. You can push back Social Security till you're age 70, which gives you the biggest check you can possibly get moving forward from there. There's all sorts of nice ways you can maybe pay down some debt that you have accumulated by having that income still coming in. There's a lot of really positive things. The second piece of it is we all love to be valued. So even if you're not earning gobs of money, earning something makes you feel valued and relevant. And there, the thing is, a lot of it isn't about the money at all. I mean, in order to have a rich life, it's often about being engaged in the community, having a network of friends. When people step away from work, they often go into mourning because it may be that they don't miss the job as much as they truly miss their community, their work friends, that idea of having some place to go and to be feel like you're part of humanity, part of the world. So I think there's the emotional and use it or lose it for your mental capacity. So I think we have so many good reasons to continue work that I'm a big fan of it. And I think it provides a great ballast for people moving into these next years as they do that little dance about what is it I want to do with my life? How do I balance doing some paid work, doing some things I've been put off doing for all these years? But it gives you a holistic look at a life moving forward. And work, I think, is genuinely a piece of that process.
You mentioned Social Security. I know we've seen, in this period of volatility, people starting to scratch their heads about maybe I should tap it sooner than I was planning on tapping it. What are you saying to them?
Yeah, Jean, good point. And I think we're definitely I've seen from the data from Social Security Administration, there's been a spike since January of people filing for initial Social Security benefits. So what it is once again, a lot of people are doing it because they're nervous, that they're concerned about the future of Social Security. They want to maybe think they'll get grandfathered in if there are changes, if they've already started. There are lots of reasons that are related to where we are in time right now in the economic situation and political situation. But let's say this. It's been this way for years. It's an individual decision. Sometimes people need to start it earlier than age 70 at 62 because they have health issues. They've had to step away from work. They've had some sort of financial mispat. Maybe they have lost that job that we talked about at the top. Sometimes it makes sense. So we can't say it's the best thing for everybody to hold off. I mean, it's standard advice if you can. But I do think we're seeing a spike now because of people's nervousness. But I think throughout time, people often do. Frankly, I think most people do start taking it at age 62.
Historically, I think that's definitely been the case. Although
Mhm.
for a while we were starting to see those numbers float down. It would be a shame if we start to see them ratchet up again. In your book, you have a whole chapter devoted to career advice for women over 50. Why focus on women?
Well, I think that women in general, at this stage of life, if for some reason they've stepped out of the workplace on some level, even if it's not completely, but to raise children or be a caregiver or what have you, they're often just getting back in at 50 and saying, hey, I'm ready to go again. I've got to redeploy these skills that I've been using maybe outside of the corporate speak and shift them to get back on the job. So they're often not ready to step away. In addition, there's so much bias against women in general. It's very difficult. There's still the pay gap, which you talk and write about extensively. All of these things, women still have these barriers in front of them. So I do think it's imperative that women really take control of their work future because it takes a lot. It takes a little more effort than you might expect to make sure you can find your way back in. And it often may start with doing a contract or a flexible position that allows you to kind of step back into the workplace and build that reputation again.
And build back your financial health. The Peak 65 research shows that 51% of women in the Peak 65 zone have less than $100,000 in assets.
Yes.
That is a very precarious position in which to be approaching retirement. How do you make up ground?
Yeah, I mean, you just again, it's just like buckling down and truly, negotiating for that salary going into the job, making sure that you're saving as much as you can, getting as lean and mean as possible. And maybe you do have to do side gigs. There could be you build out a multiple passive income. This is a time that you got to hit the gas pedal because, as you said, the statistics for women in poverty at older ages are pretty startling, and a lot of it is because even if they're in a married relationship, and a lot of the medical expenses may go to the spouse, may a lot of things may have been eaten up along the way. They haven't had the same pay, so they don't have as much, as you said, set aside because the less you make, the less get that you can match with your employer and all those good things. So there's many reasons why women have this thing going forward. Before, can I add one example? I was thinking, I
Please.
meant to say this when we were talking about the job thing. So when you're thinking about redeploying your skills to find a new job if you've lost one, there was someone I met who he was in sales and lost his job not all that long ago, and it was in this age category, nearing 60, and just like couldn't find work and blamed it on ageism. He went down. He's a fabulous sailor. He went down to Longboat Key in Florida. He started teaching sailing just for the winter break. I mean, it wasn't a permanent thing. He's out with the CEO teaching him how to sail. And the guy says, hey, he told him he was looking for work, that this is what he was doing. He goes, well, we have a position at my company in New Jersey as a project manager. And he said, you should apply. And the guy says, no, I've never, I don't know anything about being a project manager. I've never been one. And he said, well, guess what? You've just shown me that you can be a project manager. You went from A to B. You've taught me all these things about sailing, which is all about ways, skills that could be used as a project manager. Well, fast forward, he got the job. He's now been promoted twice. He added all the certificates he needed. He never dreamed he would be doing a project manager kind of job. But so look to your hobbies, look to the things that you love to find clues to what kind of skills you might have that you haven't identified that could be really great to sell in the workplace.
When you look to those skills, do you have any strategies to help people pair them up with the jobs that are out there? Part of the challenge, I think, of LinkedIn, for example, and I love LinkedIn, but part of the challenge is you look where you look, and so you only see what you look at. How do you expand your your circle so that those skills that you have can filter into the jobs that might be relevant for you, even if you never expected them to be?
Yeah, I guess, Jean, the easy and as I said, I think LinkedIn is super platform for people job searching, but it really comes down to telling everyone you know that you're looking for work and really talking to people, doing those informational interviews with people that are doing cool jobs, like things that you might really want to do, and find out what are the opportunities there, what kind of skills are needed in those kind of jobs. It's usually these things percolate up in a conversation. It's not something that's written down someplace. And so those are the informal sort of networking situations that can clue you in to what jobs might be applicable to what you know how to do, or what you're willing to learn how to do. We're adding new skills. You might find there's something you've always wanted to learn how to do, and that leads you down a path that you didn't expect. But again, I do think probably my favorite tip is to just reach out to those around you, and you find these unlikely sources of jobs, whether it's your son's friend at the table telling you to talk to his mother who could help you find a job teaching English as a second language. I mean, these things happen just spontaneously.
Some people hesitate to ask, right? I think that asking for help in the field of careers sometimes falls loosely in that adjacent category of talking about money, right? We're not necessarily comfortable doing it. And yet what you're saying, I know to be true. Jobs are not necessarily gotten through the computer. They're gotten through conversation with other people. So how do you get yourself to have these conversations if you're feeling reluctant?
I know it is so hard. You just have to say every day you're going to reach out to one person, or make a deal with yourself that you're going to just set a goal and push through it, because the truth is people love to help other people. Most people really, we like to connect people. We like to see somebody succeed. We like to make that opportunity for someone. So talking to, I don't know about you, but I rarely turn down anyone who reaches out and said, can you just talk to me for 15 minutes about
Yeah.
X? This is what we do. And I think that people are kinder than one wants it. When we get all caught up in our head, like, I don't want to look vulnerable, I don't want to look needy, don't want to take somebody's time. Back away. Everyone likes to help each other. If they say no, move on to somebody else.
Yeah, 100% on that. All right, Kerry, as we wrap it up here, your top three pieces of advice for people who either have been laid off or are concerned that they will be forced to retire earlier than expected.
Yeah, well, number one, get financially fit. It doesn't happen overnight, but do everything you can do to get lean and mean, to know what you've got, where you can cut back. And that, because debt is the biggest dream killer to your future. So if you can do that, that's number one. Number two, be realistic. Take a good hard look about what your skills are. Do that inner MRI. What do you know how to do right now? What would you love to do right now? Dream a little, give yourself some time. And number three, network. Get out there and talk to people. Find out what's out there. Join the world. I always tell people, get out of your head and get into the world, because when people get all caught up trying to figure out what to do next, they go out and start talking to people.
Kerry's book is called In Control at 50 Plus, How to Succeed in the New World of Work. You're going to want to pick it up. Kerry, where else can we find information about you and your work?
Oh, Jean, thank you so much. It's pretty easy. Just go to my website, which is kerryhannon.com. So KerryHannon.com. And I'm on LinkedIn also. And those are the two best ways. I'm on Facebook as well, but I would go with my website and you'll find me there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And if you're interested in the topic of retirement, all things retirement, we publish a great newsletter at the Alliance for Lifetime Income. You can get on our list by going to protectedincome.org/subscribe. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thanks for being here, Kerry. We'll see you
Thank
next
you.
time. Bye.